Thank you both. Thank you. All right. Then I will get started. You can see this. Okay. Right. Okay. Starting off, let me state that this panel is being recorded and will be available in archive form on the OtherCon's official YouTube channel in the future. So, greetings everyone, and welcome to the panel Phytanthropy: An Introduction. In this panel, I will be covering the topic of phytanthropes, including the origin of the word, some examples of the kinds of phytanthropes that are out there, and much more. There will be time after the presentation for any questions and if you want to share any of your own experiences and thoughts. Um, but a bit of forewarning, I do have our system's desktop and phone set up to see, while I do have those the chat and the questions channel up, um, I'll be trying to avoid the temptation of looking at either until the end of the presentation, just so I don't get distracted and lose my place in my script or my notes. Uh, so I won't be looking at the chat and taking questions until after the presentation is complete. With that out of the way, let me get started. First of all, let me introduce myself. I am Darahagh, though I am also sometimes called Southern Roots within the system I'm a part of, which is called the House of Chimeras. While my gender is non-binary, I mostly stick towards he/him pronouns, but will use they/them pronouns to a lesser extent. I am a Southern live oak phytanthrope. I also have a secondary phytanthropic kintype of as a undescribed non-earthly carnivorous tree. I don't know if this is a kintype or actually an undiscovered fictotype, um, but I will say if anyone has come across a piece of media that includes a tree that traps prey using specialized roots, let me know. I would be very interested. Other aspects of my alter humanity include being a dungeon core, other linker, and having an assortment of tree and more generally plant-related heart types and or paratypes. There is a lot more to my alter humanity than that, but nothing else that can be pinned down with labels as of yet. Finally, I am actually the one who incidentally coined the term phytanthropy and phytanthrope back in February of 2013, oddly enough. So, to get it really started, terms and definitions, everyone's favorite thing. Simply put, a phytothrope refers to someone who identifies as a plant. Likewise, phytanthropy refers to describes the state of being a phytanthrope. Phytanthrope could also be technically shortened to phyton, similar to how therin is a shortened version of therianthrope. Uh, Finally, a phytotype refers to what plant a phytanthrope identifies as. These terms all stem from the Greek word phyton, which means plant, and the Greek word anthrope, meaning human. Similar to how therin is constructed with Greek word uh, therin, meaning beast, etc. Uh, Beyond the basic definition of, quote, identifying as a plant, end quote, other aspects of what a phytanthrope or plantkin is, such as noting the existence of it being spiritual, psychological, other, neither in nature, that it's integral, etc., are all things that commonly appear in a longer definition, whereas it might be left unsaid in a very short definition. Phytanthropy and its like are far from the only terms available for plant identified individuals. Various terms can be and have been crafted using the suffix kin to denote what type of other they identify as. Chief among them is being plantkin. It is a term phytanthrope is actually an alternative for. It is probably one of the most used throughout the alter human community, past and present. Under plantkin, countless terms seeking to be a bit more specific have been used. These include treekin and flowerkin. Finally, there also exists the term greenkin. Greenkin is an older term that doesn't get as much used anymore. It was mostly seen in tandem with plantkin during the mid to late 2000s. Um, and it also does make an appearance in Lupa's Field Guide to Otherkin. I'm going to take a drink real quick. So while we're on the subject of terms and definitions, an interesting aside. So what about fungi? Okay, are fungus identified people phytanthropes? So taxonomically, fungi are not plants. Fungi are their own distinct kingdom. However, that hasn't always been considered the case. Fungi becoming their own distinct kingdom, separate from the kingdom Plantae, didn't occur until around the 1960s. More importantly, outside of taxonomic specifications, fungi tend to be included when people are talking about plants in general. Just think about how often society at large just groups in fungi when they're talking or thinking about plants without a second thought. More importantly, ultrahuman labels need not be so narrowly confined to strict scientific classifications as a default. They're all personal labels after all. So when it comes to the question of whether fungus identified people are phytanthropes, I feel like it is a question only individuals can answer for themselves. At the very least, as the person who coined phytanthropy, I certainly didn't have excluding fungus identified people in mind when I started smashing prefixes and suffixes together like they're Lego blocks. Um, Though in the case of fungus identified people wanting a more distinct label separate from phytanthrope altogether, the term mycanthrope does exist. Uh, Mycanthrope being the term mica coming from another Greek word that is used for fungi and fungus. Think of mycelium, etc., etc. So, with that out of the way, beyond basic definitions. So, for a little bit of background for those unaware, from the 27th of May until August 1st, I ran a survey seeking data on phytanthropes and plantkin because I wanted more insight into this subject than just a lonely tree like me could ever provide. The survey ended with having just a little over 30 responders. And so this is where things are going to become a little bit more going from a script to just notes, because leaving myself with only a week was not enough time to go through all the data and make nice, pretty slides. I apologize. I think I bit off more than I can chew. So in regards to not being able to look at really pretty graphics, what was some of the data that came out of this survey? Most of the responders, at roughly 90%, in fact, identify as real world plant species. The second largest category, at roughly 30%, identified as fictional plant species. The third largest category were real world fungi species at 24%. Other categories included cryptid, folkloric, mythical plants entities, as well as one responder who identified as a Pacific fictional plant character. Oop, ready for that yet? Go back. As far as specific species, so far the data has shown a wide variety of species. Various tree species, flowering plants, non-flowering plants, moss, etc. There does not seem to be any specific category that outweighs one species over another. Uh, there doesn't seem to be a wolf version of phytanthropes when it comes to like how therans are. Other things that the data showed was that phytanthropes experience shifts, including phantom and mental shifts. Uh, that phytanthropes can and do experience things like species dysphoria and euphoria, and that neomata, if Poppy's in the chat, I am sorry, I can never pronounce that correctly. I don't know if I did, I doubt it. My name is Darahagh, and it's spelled the way it is, after all. Um, so essentially, the diversity that phytanthropes experience is about the same with otherkin and therans, meaning it's very diverse. There is no one way to be a phytanthrope and experience being a phytanthrope. Uh, let's see. So since the phytanthrope survey only closed just over a week ago, like I said, I didn't have enough time to really analyze the data and use it just towards this panel. Further, the amount of data produced really couldn't be given full justice at just an hour-long panel. Um, what I have covered already is really simply the most simplest of overviews of this survey results. Thankfully, when I first decided to host this panel on the topic of phytanthropy, I had already decided to start a new writing project, an in-depth essay, or perhaps even a booklet on the topic of phytanthropy. While the survey was circulating, I was not only working on this panel, but I was also beginning to collect references for something of a great deal more involved than just a panel. I have every intention in including more of an in-depth implementation of the survey results than what I would be able to do in this panel. I also intend for this document to cover matters such as religious beliefs regarding plants having souls, information of the ongoing academic endeavors across various disciplines trying to shed light on just exactly how conscious plants might actually be, and more. Let me take a drink real quick. That being said, I cannot guarantee when such a thing will be published. I am not one of our system's primary fronters, and our system collectively has a lot going on in our life at this time. I cannot even begin to give a tentative time frame of when such a project may be published. However, I do have every intention on something being produced, however long that may be. Well, I'm a tree. Trees are not known for their specific swiftness. Um, This data will also be used as part of a book project our system, along with along with our partners Paige Shepard and Ryan Scribner, are working on. However, in a single doc, however, if a single document was a long, involved process, a whole book is a whole multitude of work entirely. And now we're dealing with three bodies with hectic adults' lives. So this too is another project we also can't give a definitive time frame of when it might be completed. Moving on. The history of phytanthropes. I do want to briefly touch on some history about plant identified people because uh, that is one of the things the system I'm a part of really gets excited about. So, plant identified people and mentions of them have been in and around the communities for quite some time, uh, though they have gone by several different terms. The oldest mention of them online incidentally happens to take place on alt. I am so sorry. On Altor Werewolves in 1995. Uh, During this time, a thread was asked where people were asking if wereplants were possible, and at least one responder said that they actually knew a couple of wereplants. However, as an archive, Altor Werewolves is very incomplete, and some of the discussions took place on chats that have not been archived. So I don't know for sure if any of these claimed wereplants were ever actually active of any capacity on Altor Werewolves. Other events that have taken place relating to plantkin in the community includes a website that was called Green is More Than a Color. This is one of the earliest cases of a web page slash a website that focused on the topic of greenkin. This was the website that helped popularize for a time that term as a alternative to just plantkin. Another event that has taken place includes the forum Plant Your Spirit being created. Uh, this was in 2006, and it unfortunately, due to how rare plantkin were, especially at that time frame, it never received much activity. And while it still exists online, it is entirely um, abandoned. Uh, Other events in 2007, when Lupa's Field Guide to Otherkin was published, it does include a brief mention of a plantkin slash greenkin who filled out her survey. In 2016, the Tumblr blog Plantkin Suggestion was created. This is notable as Plantkin Suggestions has been one of the most active resources for Plantkin that has existed in the history of the alternate community as of this time. The creators of that blog have also, a year later, created the website Plantkin Information, which also uh, resources carries resources relating to being plantkin. If you're interested in learning any more about the existence of plant-identified people in the Alter Human community, I recommend an article our system put together called A Timeline of Plantkin-Identified People in the Otherkin Communities. Links to it can be found on our website, the Chimeras Library, at http://houseofchimeras.neocities.org. So similar to how Therans have the Theta Delta and Otherkin have the septagram, Plantkin have their own symbol as well. The Plantkin symbol consists of an upside down equilateral triangle with a line running horizontally across it, while in the center rests a stylized plant stem. The upside down triangle with a line running across it is actually the alchemical symbol for Earth. The default symbol consists of a single stem with two leaves sprouting from it from each side and have a few variations of how the stem will appear. I've always interpreted it as there being some room for personalization, hence why my own personalized plantkin symbol also sports acorns as a homage to my oak phytotype. I'm taking another drink, I'm sorry. Oops. The origin of the plantkin symbol began with the mods of Plantkin Suggestion on Tumblr creating a survey that took place in July of 2017, asking for what symbols the responders would think would best represent phytanthropy. Some of the symbols presented included the symbol used for Earth in Greco-Roman astronomy, the alchemical symbol for Earth, as said before, the pentagram, the planetary symbol for Eris, and the lotus flower symbol. In the end, the alchemical symbol of Earth gathered the most votes, and soon the basis of the symbol, adding in a stylized plant stem, was added. From there, the rest is history. To end things off, I want to give a little more in-depth example of what phytanthropes can experience. Due to the fact that I haven't had a chance to go over the survey results to any length, that kind of leaves me having to use myself. Unshame. So, of course, please remember that everyone's experiences are individual, and not every phytanthrope is going to have experiences that necessarily mirror my own. So, firstly, I want to go over one of my most notable things that I experience when I front, uh, and that is phantom limbs. I don't have shifts so much as I have phantom limbs that are ever present for however long I front. to some degree or another. Of my phantom limbs, my roots are consistently the most vivid. They cover our body's physical feet in a phantom simulation of the very boundary between the trunk and the roots, with phantom roots growing from the side and bottom of the feet. These roots are constantly, automatically, and instinctively, quote unquote, growing downward into the ground. This makes moving around, especially the act of walking, quite an experience. Thankfully, it's not a painful experience, just a strange sensation. My other major phantom limbs are what I call my phantom branch antlers, branch tail, and wings, due to their specific locations on the body. I often wonder if their location says something about how the human brain handles uh, supplementary uh, phantom limb locations, or if it's simply our system's brain placing my phantom limbs in locations where other people who front regularly have their own phantom limbs, trying to simplify how our own physical brain deals with phantom limbs. Uh, that is something that I find interesting, but I don't have any idea of to why or where this is the case for at least for our system. Either way, I have phantom branches on my head that grow in a manner vaguely similar to antlers. Um, I also have a phantom branch that mimics a tail, both in location and its general appearance, and a pair of branches that mimic wings, sort of. Their appearance doesn't mimic a full set of wings in size or scale so much as their general location on the body's back. Sadly, I don't have an illustration of the latter, um, due to the fact that that was another thing that I completely ran out of time with, of making all of these illustrations. Interesting for me, these phantom limbs seem to take after my second phytotype, the unearthly carnivorous tree, as I can actually move them. This is something especially useful regarding my tail and wings, as I can move them out of the way so I don't have to always experience the sensation of having them pass through every other object that my body is in the vicinity of. Also, interestingly, they do not emote at all. Their movements is solely based on either my own conscious direction or are instinctively reactive to my direct environment. Uh, they also don't move like animal limbs at all. If you've ever seen plants like the Venus flytrap or touch me nots in action, their movement kind of reminds me of how they move. It's all a little delayed and almost mechanical. Any other phantom limbs that I experience, I have are beyond anything consistent or uniform. They can range from feeling bark on various random parts of the skin, or even just small stems with leaves poking out here or there. I also experience species dysphoria and species euphoria while I'm at front. These dichotomies between the two are often hard to put into words of how one or the other can be triggered. Um, they are just another part of my existence while I am at front. Finally, there is also the state of having a mindset that constantly feels distinctly not human. Honestly, a lot of how many Therans describe their animality often resonates with me on how I experience myself, minus some specific instincts relating to eating and movement. Uh, in fact, I am about In fact, I am terrible about not eating when fronting because it doesn't come across my mind. And it's only once I switch then suddenly someone cries out, "What the heck? Why is the body starving?" Um, that I actually realize that I simply was not getting the signal from the body that the body was hungry. I mostly attribute this to not fronting often, and so do not uh, And so I mostly attribute this to not fronting often, as opposed to its distinctly and only being because I'm a phytanthrope alone. In fact, right after Paige's panel a bit ago, Earth Listener shoved me out of front to scarf down something resembling food because I had been fronting all day trying to get ready for this panel. Um, because again, eating simply did not cross my mind. The biggest part of my experiences as a plant actually stems from my existence in our system's inner world. I only front every so once in a while. Most of my daily life doesn't take place here. Um, However, all of that is so much different than any experience of a singlet theron or otherkin, and is also very specific to my existence as part of being in a gateway system. I fear going into too much of that will be an ill fit for this panel, but feel free to ask about it either here or elsewhere if anyone is interested. And if you're interested in hearing more about my own personal phytanthropic experiences, overall, I do have a personal essay, What Being a Phytanthrope Is to Me, though it is in need of some updating, but that is just a general problem. Basically, everything our system has ever written has. Uh, as soon as it's published, it needs to be updated. Links to this essay can also be found on our website, the Chimeras Library as well. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I want to thank you for being with me here today just for the presentation part. And now I want to switch gears for this panel. With the rest of this panel's allotted time to share experiences and or if anyone has any Q&As, whatever anyone sees fit. As a reminder, please direct all questions to the panel questions channel at this time. I'd also like to apologize because I don't front often. I've been having trouble speaking. I did not know this would be a problem, but speaking is hard. Okay, so I'm going to start looking through the questions chat. And now I have both the panel questions and the chat up. Poppy says, "Oop, Discord, stop moving. You said something about plants that trap things in their roots. Do you know about carnivorous water wheels? It's not a plant, but there's also some I could never pronounce that word. It's a fungi that traps worms with snares. Oh, and of course, uh, uh, there's a Yavedo, which traps things in modified branches, not roots. I have heard of the Yadaveo. It was one thing that I was looking up to make sure that that wasn't the case of what my second phytotype is. But for my species is very distinctly the roots, and is also very distinctly a tree. But I haven't heard of water wheels. I will have to look into that because I love learning about new plants. I wonder why. Sakura says, on the topic of the Phytanthropy survey, have any of the results you've gone through so far surprised you? I think the thing that surprised me the most was just how many people who responded who uh, did consider themselves phytanthropes or plantkin, whose kin types or fictotypes were of who had a fictotype that was a plant or had a kin type that was a plant. There is just for the fact of I was curious if people that identified with those words the most were strictly of the earthly variety. Similar to how sometimes people are leery of using Theron, just because they associate it with just earthly animals as opposed to animals in general. See Dosky's essay and past panels on the myth of Theron being earthly only, if you're a little bit interested in that. So I was curious if something similar was going to be a problem. Well, saying problem seems like the wrong word, but I can't think of a better one. I was curious if it was going to be the case with phytanthropes, and apparently it's not. People feel comfortable using phytanthrope regardless of if their species is an earthly plant or not. And that was probably so far the biggest thing that interests me. Oh no, chat, you moved Discord. Why? What are your thoughts on fructanthropy, fruits, and vegetropy being categorized under phytanthropy? It makes sense. Fruits and vegetables. Uh, oh, let me finish. Although these species technically aren't plants themselves, they bear the form of harvest from plants. It makes sense. Also, alter-human labels are weird. Um, Trying to put them in necessarily a nice, neat, and tidy taxonomic S branching system is never going to work very well. Um, because identities are weird. They branch off, they overlap. Um, so if they are not necessarily sub kinds of phytanthropes, you could say that they are uh, very close and akin to them, label wise. Again, speaking is hard, finding words is hard. I did not know this was going to be a problem. Do you have any advice for someone questioning phytanthropy, especially if you don't experience shifts? Additionally, what do you feel like mentally to be a tree? This is already always kind of a difficult question. I would say trying to figure out if someone is a phytanthrope would be similar to trying to figure out any other type of alter-human identity. Um, I'm sure people in chat have a long list of resources, essays that try to give advice and tips on finding your kin types and stereotypes. As far as I'm aware, those kind of essays would be perfectly analogous for phytanthropes to use, just by being conscious of what experiences someone does have, whether they're shifts or just neomod. And as far as mentally, what it feels like to be a tree, um, I've always had trouble putting it into words. The question was posed earlier in a chat as part of this convention, and I honestly had trouble thinking of words to describe it. Um, it's one of those things where outside of it is definitely not human and it is definitely does not feel like something that should be moving the same way that animals, which humans are animals, move. Um, in the panel questions, how did you figure out what species of plant you are? For me, just like many people in our system, we kind of lucked out in the fact that we have a very detailed inner world that is very vivid. Um, so it was pretty easy for me to look around, or not look, but for other people in the system to look around and realize that's a tree. Beyond that, being able to figure out that I was specifically a southern live oak Um, we lucked out in the fact of having once actually been able to visit a monastery that had a giant, several hundred-year-old southern live oak. Um, they are a plant species that mostly live around um, the Gulf of Mexico. So they aren't native to the area that our body physically lives in. So our experience of being able to see one in person and be able to compare and contrast how southern live oaks look compared to other kinds of oaks was very helpful. And then as far as my second phytotype, um, I'm still in the process of trying to figure out exactly what species that is. Um, as of right now, I mostly just call it a carnivorous non-earthly tree, because I don't know if it's a kintype or a fictotype, or maybe it's neither of those things. Who knows? Uh, can we get a link for a plantkin information website? Um, I will have to look for it. If no, has anyone already linked it in chat? If not, I can go hunt for it. Um, what do you recommend for connecting more with one's phytotype? Especially actions like as a Theron, you can just curl up like your phytotype, but I don't know if there is a suitable equivalent. Um, at least for me, at least when it comes to fronting, um, being out in the sun with our body's feet directly on bare earth is very nice. Uh, though definitely everyone always has to remind me to put sunblock on because our body is very pale, and because of of certain medications, we're very prone to sunburn. Paige could attest to this because we were outside in Florida once in less than 15 minutes and got sunburn. Yes. Other than that, I'm not sure. Um, Again, I don't front very often, so I always have trouble giving advice for other phytanthropes or people questioning if they are, because my experiences with being a tree is so different than uh, what people that don't spend 95% of their life not in this reality. Yes, basking in the sun. Do you visualize your ideal self as fully a tree, or do you also consider a more humanoid shaped form of yourself to be you? Does it fluctuate? Funny enough, the image, just for reference, you slide all the way back through my slide. There. Um, on this slide about me, that humanoid form that is there, that is my humanoid form in our systems in our world. Uh, Multiple people in our system usually can change form between various either of their types or kind of more humanoid voyage versions of their types in a couple of situations. For myself, I don't have forms. I just have literally multiple bodies. Um, if you're familiar with the uh, Aspen Pango, where a single organism is actually made up of a single forest is actually one single organism, it kind of reminds me of that. I have a body that is an oak, a body that is that carnivorous tree, and a body that is the humanoid plant dryad. I actually don't know what the humanoid form would count as. So I have three bodies simultaneously in our inner world. So whenever I see myself, I visualize one of those three for the most part. I technically could change forms, but I've just like the rest of the system can, or at least the majority of the fronters can. But I've never actually really tried. I've never really had a reason to. Um, because my humanoid form, I can interact with people on a one-to-one basis. So, and I have hands. That's the biggest reason some people in our system have humanoid forms because hands are great. Lapori, is there actually a food that does give you plant feels when you're not forgetting to that you need food? That is, I'm not sure. I've had if there is something that would give me feels, I haven't tried it yet. I have seen on the plant kin suggestions blog there have been various people that have suggested recipes that might be very species euphoric. So those might be of interest to people or be useful to certain people. But for me personally, I've never come across anything that is particularly euphoric. House of Stars, is there anything written about there being plant heartedness? I don't know if there has been. Um, I know that in this our collective group, our system, Paige Shepherd and Orion Scribner, we have already done a survey on other heartedness, and there were responders that were plant hearted. But as far as like people actually writing about being plant hearted, I have not seen if anyone has talked about those experiences. I would hope there are because I always like seeing people talk about their experiences online. And for those that are plant hearted and are kind of thinking about sharing their experiences, yes. Please see pages or archives of his panels from earlier today, as well as past panels, the You Are Not a Museum piece, when it comes to making things for the community and for yourself. Willow, in addition to this, do you have any tips for connecting to one's phytotype uh, while staying inside? I have heat sensitivity. Hello, that is such a mood. Uh, and can't go out much during the summer. Um, hmm. Ironically, one of the things I've noticed that I find very soothing is um, those ambience videos of being in nature. They're actually uh, they're actually very popular across many people in our system, though what videos we vibe with the most varies greatly. Just things that represent the sight and sound of different locations that feel very species euphoric can be great. Uh, Especially in cases where either we can't physically go to those locations, for example, Ocean Watcher loves videos of sounds of the ocean. We live nowhere by the ocean. So in this case, like while we live in areas where there's lots of forest, we live in a city. So I do enjoy the sounds and visuals of forest, for example. Uh, Logan asks, has there I've been questioning linking a plant fungus However, I'm not sure I identify fully with a form of plant. Rather, I identify with the trope of being a creature that has plants, fungi growing from me. Would you say that this could count as phytanthropy? If you think it does, why not? Um, there is no hard and fast rules when it comes to labels. Again, the label, the definition is just identify as a plant. How much you identify as a plant will kind of give you your own answer. A couple of the respondents to the survey identify as Pokemon that have grass types. And so some of those grass people, some of the people that responded uh, have types that are not completely plant. Think leafy on. I can't think of any other examples. And so if they can consider themselves phytanthropes, why not? Also, we have this panel started at 4 o'clock, right? I'm not wrong. Has it really been almost an hour? Uh, if this panel has been going on for almost an hour, um, I will continue to take questions until exactly 5 o'clock, and then I want to cut things off because I don't want to uh, disrupt any other convention events going on. Because I think there's an event that starts at 5. Um, Getting back into the questions. The only thing that comes to mind is Old Man Willow, that trapped Merry and Pippin in his roots. I believe this came from mythology around willows and their roots, but I'm not sure. I will obviously be searching for any mythological links from that. Perhaps you know of it. I think I know what you're referring to. Um, as part of the uh, project, the writing project that I've started making a list of examples of plants as characters in media, including folklore, and I believe I noted down several instances in The Lord of the Rings. Uh, but I have not actually ever read any of Tolkien's work. Or no one in our system has ever sat down and actually read any of Tolkien's work. It's on the read list, and no one wants to see how long that thing is. Amber, can you came late to this? I don't know if this was asked already. How does it feel to perceive reality through human senses as opposed to tree senses? Do you perceive them? Do you perceive time differently? Also, would the human brain add to or remove anything from your consciousness, or does your self feel just the same, only operating on a different hardware? Um, for me, it feels like only a small part of me is actually fronting. Um, it's a very weird experience, just because there's so much of me that is obviously more focused on things that are going on in our system's inner world, and it feels like not all of me is actually me when I'm fronting. It's like a fragment, I guess you could say. Um, so being in a human body with human senses feels weird, but because of that disconnect, there is a little bit of dissociation, so it's not as weird as it probably could be. And also, thankfully, uh, because of being part of a system, I have the memories and everything from the rest of the system. So eyes, smell, etc., aren't as wildly shocking as they could be if they were completely foreign experiences. Yes, I'm very excited for the concept identity panel. Actually, I've been excited for every panel on this year's other con. It's been great. Does your self-perception and/or phantom limbs change at all with the seasons, such as dropping leaves, bare branches, flowering, etc.? Um, interesting. Interestingly, the reason southern live oaks are called live oaks is they are one of the very few species of oak that do not drop their leaves. They are effectively an evergreen tree. That was one of the another way that I was able to tell what type of tree I was because I realized very quickly I was a broadleaf tree, but I do not lose my leaves during the wintertime. Um, I have experienced like the growth of acorns and dropping of acorns, but I don't think I've ever fronted while that was taking place. Like it takes place on my tree body in our air world, but I've never. I should put that on a list of things. Our system is always finding things to experiment with when it comes to our phantom limbs, so I'll just add that to the list. Have Darahagh front while he's dropping acorns. Got it. Just like on the list, there's things like uh, while Sky Singer is molting feathers, make him front. Do you perceive a connection to the root network at all of any? Um, sorry, I was reading this in my head for a second. Do you perceive the connection to the mycelial root network at all of any forms inside or outside of front, like the kinds of plant communication networks that are studied in forests? Definitely not while I'm fronting. Um, in world, I would say yes, tentatively, but my awareness of consciousness is definitely different than what a baseline normal tree would think. Um, is not I am not a normal southern live oak tree anymore, even in our systems inner world. Still have a few minutes. I keep checking chat and time. Um, how do you feel towards birds who nest in your branches? Probably about the same as everyone in this chat. You have mites that live in your eyebrows. You're welcome. Uh, so I would assume my feelings on animals that live in or on trees is about the same. It's like, oh, they just live there. Hmm. Okay, moving on. Other than that, um, yeah, I don't have any specific feelings. My body is just an environment for them. Um, yes, physical bodies are just their own ecosystems. Exactly. Um, so, um, even though birds are a heck of a lot bigger than bacterium and tiny mites, um, they're still kind of the feeling of, just another part of a tiny ecosystem is how I perceive birds. Looks like I finally caught up to the panel questions. Um, ah, have a good night, Poppy. It is midnight. Oh dear. Time zones. So yeah, since I looks like I've gotten through all the panel questions and it is just about 5 o'clock, I will be ending this stream. Again, if there's any questions that anyone has, either on Phytanthropy or my own personal experiences, or just want to chat, feel free to add me at in any part of the um con channels. Um, So I'm horrible at goodbyes. So I hope everyone found my rambling very, at least mildly entertaining and maybe informative. I thank you a whole lot for your patience with me. Thank you.